Welcome, everyone, to the Nerd Journey Podcast, episode number 100, milestone podcast number. We're joining you every week to talk IT career progression and bring you the advice we wish we'd been given earlier in our careers. I'm your host, John White, at VJourneyman on Twitter, joined by my co-host, Nick Cordy, at NetworkNerd_. Hey, Nick, how's it going?
Hey, John. I'm just happy that we're completing the Hot 100 today.
That's right.
I'm excited. We are both pre-sales technical engineers with backgrounds in IT operations. We hope our career discussions will be vendor neutral, relevant across disciplines, and remain timeless. If you're enjoying our content, please drop us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with us, tweet or DM at Nerd Journey. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A journey to virtual enlightenment.
So let's take a trip.
Awesome, Nick. Hey, so with episode 100, I think we kind of decided that we wanted to do like kind of something akin to what we would do in a bonus episode, not necessarily talk about career stuff, although we will reflect a little bit on that. But we wanted to kind of do a little bit of navel gazing, look back over the past 100 episodes, which I assume neither of us thought we'd ever get to, and kind of, pull some stats, see what worked and what didn't. And maybe the thing to do is start out at the beginning, right? Like, how did this entire thing get started? Do you remember?
It was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, is how I remember it starting.
It's been about 3 years, a little bit over 3 years, right? Closer to 4?
It was the weekend before I started my job at VMware, which would have been like November, December 2017. And you send me this message, hey, we should start a podcast. And I'm going, a podcast?
I'm about to start a new job. That's the last thing I need to do. Is do something new on top of that.
So John gave me homework before my first day on a new job.
And so I want to say the original thesis was kind of following you through your joining VMware and what it was like to come from like a small and medium-sized business over to one, an IT vendor, and two, like a pretty large company, a Fortune 500 company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was sitting here going, man, can I do this? Can I be on a podcast? What would we talk about?
Right. I remember it was kind of a big deal just because at the time you were pretty, I don't know if stressed was the word or anxious was the word about coming to VMware, and you wanted to know what to expect like the first couple of days, and I think you were still concerned about being like pretty salesy instead of being close to the technology and losing your IT chops, I think is how you described it.
Yep.
So I think we were still talking through that at the time.
Yeah, we were. I mean, I was definitely pretty excited. Don't get me wrong. I love the job. I think it's been fantastic. It's been 3 years now, interestingly enough. So, yeah, you have those first day jitters. You hadn't worked for a vendor before, hadn't worked in a pre-sales technical role like this before. So, of course, there's some natural anxiety. Appreciate you talking me through that.
Well, I just thought that it was a good topic for a podcast.
Yeah.
I think it was probably a small topic for a few episodes of a podcast. Probably not just follow Nick along as he learns what it's like to work at VMware is probably not a good like overall topic for a podcast. But is the germ of an idea.
And what made you want to start a podcast, John? I remember you had done the VMware Roundtable Communities podcast as a co-host for a little while, right?
Yeah. I think, I really love doing that podcast, and I still listen to it. They still do the Color of the Bay report, which was some nonsense that I pioneered.
And how much have you made in royalties on that?
Oh, man, I am rolling in the virtual colors. Nothing, zero actual dollars. Yeah, I signed over the rights to Color of the Bay, TM. TM. Nope, no, I didn't. Trademarked. Now Now I have to be paid. No. So yeah, and I loved it as a medium, and it was awesome, and it was exciting. And I, of course, had listened to podcasts, for years and years before that, and had thought about ways in which I could improve my like VMware social footprint at the time. Um, I had a blog. I wasn't a good regular blogger, so um, I'd had success before at Spiceworks, just like engaging in conversations with people over topics. So I was just kind of looking around and looking for a way to kind of do that again, in whatever way possible. So looking for a topic, and it seemed like this was a good one. You're coming to VMware was kind of reminding me of my transition away from being an IT practitioner, small, medium sized business IT practitioner. And I was just thinking, over time, it kind of evolved into that being our topic, right? Like, hey, those are the people that are out there that sometimes feel trapped, that don't have a way out, or think that they don't have a way out, or don't know the way out. And, we've taken, some of the ways out of that. So maybe that's what we should be talking about.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully in our now 100 episodes, for those who listen, there's been something, at least one thing that's been helpful to you, if not
Yeah.
more, many
Yeah.
more.
We were going to talk about some things. I want to say, like, originally, didn't we talk about like solution engineer tools that you might need,
Yep.
that kind of thing?
We also thought we were going to do technology news and opinions,
Oh, right, about VMware. Um,
or
yeah, there just
just
seemed to,
industry in general.
yeah, tech industry. I don't think that we've necessarily shied away from that, but we've just shied away from it, except from like a career point of view, right? So I think that those are there's always room there because it's a pretty large universe, and there's a large, diverse, you know, group of viewpoints and opinions and social circles, technical social circles. So, if you're thinking about getting into podcasting as a way to increase your social media footprint, I would highly encourage it. I don't know about you, Nick, but I found it to be extremely rewarding. We've gotten to talk to people that I think that we probably would not have been able to talk to outside of the podcast.
Agreed. And even inside of the conversations with the people we've talked to, we've generally asked someone to come on the show because we wanted a specific experience from them or storyline we thought they had that somebody else did not. And every single time we learned 3 or 4 just amazing nuggets from their experiences during their career that we had no idea had happened and just turned into gold on the
Yeah.
air.
Yeah. And I think that that's been the thing that I've really enjoyed is that as you talk to people or as we talk to each other, it's like you uncover this stuff, right? You uncover experiences as you get to know somebody that you didn't know that they had, or that, points of view that you didn't know that they had, those kinds of things. I think we've become like closer colleagues and friends just on collaborating on this thing over time. So that's been really rewarding as well. Um, and yeah, so just again to reiterate, if you're thinking about getting to, increasing your social media footprint, if podcasting is one way that you want to go, I would encourage it. If you're more comfortable in the written word and not having your voice heard, then do that if that's what you prefer.
And how many podcasts did you think we would actually get to in the beginning, John? Wasn't it just a season, or let's start with the season, let's start with 10 shows or 12 shows?
I I I had started attending a podcasting meetup, right? Actually, a couple, and they all describe this thing where it's like, if you get to 20, then you're probably okay, and then if you get to 100, then you're probably going to do okay. But there's like these two like fading, pod fade is what they described as, like, oh, I just kind of fade away, you know. And those were the two areas. So we've burst through both of those areas. So I guess we're going to do okay. Or we can just fade away on our own schedule.
That's right. When we decide it's time.
Nobody tells me when I can fade away.
Exactly. Nobody puts John White in a corner.
All right. You want to move on?
Yes. All right, so it's statistics time. And it's actually quiz time for John. So we're going to do this live, and we're going to see how good John is. What I want you to try to do, John, is give me the top 5 to 10 episodes that you think we had.
Okay.
Based on number of downloads.
All right.
And I'm going to tell you if you're right after you announce to the world.
So I would say my first guess would be like a category, and I don't know exactly which one this would be, but we had some managers on to talk about making the transition to becoming a manager. And that was Charlie Nickel, Brad Pinkston, Brad Tompkins, Paul Green, like all of those people in various, leaderships from, frontline manager to director to executive director to CIO. So I'm guessing, like, one of my guesses is going to be one of those conversations somewhere in there. And then I think the rest, all of my guesses have to do with specific guests that we had on. They're dynamic guests, but they were also dynamic guests who had like large social media footprints. So Mike Burkhart, Josh Fidel, Cody Darkland, Yodeem Porter de Leon, Ethan Banks, Al Rashid. Like, I would say that's kind of my other guess.
Okay. Pretty good. Let's see how you did. So I'm going to do it in countdown style.
Okay.
So number 10 at 191 episodes is Imposter Syndrome, Anxiety, and Effective Listening with Cody DeArkland. Bullseye. Number 9, tied for number 8, Effective Remote Work Practices, episode 69.
Oh, seriously?
Mm-hmm.
That was at a time when every single podcast was doing how to work remote.
And it had 192 downloads.
I thought that, we were also, I think, a week late in that, everybody that I listened to a podcast from every single podcast that I listened to about that topic the week before we released ours. Like, we recorded it. It was just in the pipeline. And, wow, okay. All right.
And we just rode the hype wave on that one.
Okay. All right.
So also tied.
I just like new tactic is just listen to what everybody else is doing and then release like something on that the week after.
I like it. That sounds effective. It's all about the stats, remember?
Just copy what everybody else is doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Also tied for number 8 at 192 downloads, episode 42, Ethan Banks and the Journey to Career Self-Awareness.
All right. So I think
that's another good one.
Yeah.
Number 7 at 194 downloads, Managing Online Communities and Career Path Part 2 with Nick Tolstashev, episode 63.
Nick Tolstashev, how could I have forgotten that? Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Going up the list, 1, 2, 3, 4. Number 6, at 201 downloads, Your Position Has Been Eliminated with Mike Burkhart, episode 65. Boom. Number 5, 210 downloads, episode 45, Career Conversations with Your Manager.
Oh. How could I have not thought about that one? Yeah.
That one, I remember, took off pretty well as soon as it released. I don't know if just the right person promoted it, but it seemed to catch fire. Mm-hmm. Number 4, 216 downloads is episode 67, 3-month check-in as a Google Cloud customer engineer with John White, part 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Number 3, 220 downloads, Your Position Has Been Eliminated with Mike Burkhart, episode 64.
All right.
Number 2, 225 downloads, When Life Disrupts Your Work-Life Balance, episode 68. Number 1 episode at 272 downloads.
Whoa, that's a big jump.
Significantly more than number 2. Mm-hmm. Would be 3 months check-in as a Google Cloud Customer Engineer with John White, Part 1, episode 66.
Oh, seriously? Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's all we should talk about from now on is my
maybe
job.
So. Maybe so. Maybe so.
Wow.
So, what do you think is the episode with the lowest number? So the earliest episode in the top 15.
Ooh. Okay, earliest episode that made it into the top 15. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with Generalist Specialist Divide.
Oh, that was actually a good selection, but it was actually episode 1.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
183 downloads, finished in 12th place, career advancement in Nick's first week at VMware.
Got it. Okay.
Pretty crazy.
That is crazy.
So, fun statistics. Now, let's try another one, John. How many cups of coffee did I consume while podcasting over the course of these 100 episodes?
Okay, 100 episodes. I'm going to go with a factor over 1. I'm going to say like a 1.3 factor, so I'm going to say 130.
I have no idea, but that's probably a solid guess.
All right.
It's probably solid. Now, if you do the math, we have actually released, not including this episode, 111 episodes. So that is 10 bonus episodes, right? There was one episode number that had an A and a B. Do you remember what it was?
Ooh, no. I do remember why, though, is because I think we had already recorded the next number, and so we needed something like 16 A and B, something like that.
It was 18 A and B.
Ah, okay.
And the guest was Joseph Griffiths.
Ah, yeah, okay.
Total of 16,470 downloads across the board. Average of 148 downloads per episode, which isn't bad. I mean, we're not in it for the stats, but the stats are really interesting. The episode with the lowest number of downloads was at 94, and that was our bonus 2 episode about being thankful.
Ah, okay.
So,
not evergreen content.
Guess not. We didn't ride the hype wave on that one.
Why you should be thankful in 2018. People didn't revisit that. During listening to why you should be thankful during American Thanksgiving 2018. People haven't gone back, and that hasn't blown up. There's no long tail on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know.
All right. That was fascinating. I have to say that we had talked about maybe doing underrated episodes, and some of those were actually on my what I assumed would be underrated. So I'm glad to hear that things like, balancing life against work, I think that was episode 68, was actually in the top 10, top 15, when I thought it would be underrated. So good to hear.
The 60s was a great series for us. Many of those in the top 10.
Okay.
One of my underrateds, I thought that the Amy Hervey episodes, 60 and 61, were quite good from a self-promotion standpoint, getting into blogging. I really enjoyed the series we did on unexpected career opportunities.
Ah, yeah, right.
That was a 5-part series, 53 through 57. Of course, the Dreaming in Bands episode 19. I remember the conversation we had with a friend of ours that spawned this episode. You know who you are if you're listening.
Yeah. I think that the ones that I had kind of targeted maybe the series, like, I don't think that we did a specific, like, oh, hey, here's part of our ongoing series, but it should have been, right? Like, and that was like burnout. And we talked to Kieran Sheldon about that. That was, I think, episode 46 or 47. I don't remember which one of the part 1 or part 2 that we focused on kind of talking about like mental exhaustion and overcoming that. Of course, 68, balancing life against work. 82, mental health and burnout. But also 90 and 91, inner game of stress and health, the healthy mind platter, like all things that kind of focused on burnout. The IT career is rife with it, right? And I think, we maybe not up there with like, healthcare right now, but, just in kind of standard times, like there's always this demand for, extra hours and tight deadlines and working understaffed. So, um, just having all those kind of, I'm glad that I was able to spend some time thinking about, the episodes that we had done on burnout. And there's probably more topics like a little bit earlier on that were not individually labeled that I'll go back and find and put in that category as well.
Yeah, it seemed to be a common theme among a lot of guests. I know Josh Fidel had a great episode
Yep.
in that topic.
Mm-hmm. I would say like 2 interviews that we did that I thought were really good, that I thought were going to be underrated, and they weren't in the top 10. That only 10% can be in the top 10%. John Hildebrand, that was 3738, and episode 27, where we talked to Ramsey Marjaba of We the SEs. Both good conversations. And then the kind of the career focused ones, it's funny. Okay, episode 45, preparing for a career conversation with the boss, I thought was going to be underrated, but it ended up being in the top 10. Episode 57 on personal finance, I thought was pretty good. And episode 70, taking control during economic uncertainty, timely. And then I didn't know that our career check-ins were going to be so heavily represented. So I put those in a separate category. Number 1, your first week. Number 10, your 7-month. 21, 22, your 1-year check-in. 23, 24, my 3-year check-in. And then I think the 67, 66, my 3-month check-in at Google Cloud. And then 98, 99, my 1-year check-in. We haven't done a 3-year check-in for you. So there's some homework for me. I should
probably some for me too. I have to know answers to whatever you ask, right?
There you go. No, it totally all the work is on me, and you have to answer in the moment.
Okay, that sounds good. Yes.
Or we could prepare by you coming up with the questions and the answers, and then I just read them to you.
And then I'll do show notes too.
Yes. In fact, if you could record it without me, that would be great.
I'll work on that. I need to practice my John White voice so I can ask the questions properly.
Awesome. Any others for you?
I would put the Area of Destiny episode 20 in there. I thought that was an interesting idea. And then I would probably put the Jimmy Tassin interviews, especially, managing the Minecraft community and using that to get a different job. That was just a neat kind of off the wall story that we had not heard before.
Right. Yeah, that was a really, really cool one. I think we had some really good conversations, and it's really tough to say that any of them like kind of stood out as like, my favorites. I would say like my favorites have been consistently biased towards the ones that we've done most recently, just because it's easier to remember the fun parts of those conversations. But then as I look back on all of these, I remember how much fun we had talking to each of these people, and, how good each of those conversations, like, that we've gotten out of every single one of these. Like, I feel like every single one of these conversations has helped me in my career,
Same. Yeah. Every time I go back and listen to one of these, I just go, wow, I didn't catch that the first time. Wow, that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the only guest who had 3 episodes as their interview?
Yeah, okay, because that was more recent. That had to be Paul Green.
No.
No?
That was actually the Lord of the Pings, Josh Fidel.
Oh, it was Josh Fidel, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're either just long-winded or really bad at interviewing, but we tend to have two episodes per person just because it's a great conversation.
Yeah. Those, I mean, all good conversations.
Yes.
Had to say.
Some of these folks we could have talked to all night, and we would have looked up and not realized the whole night had gone by.
Yeah, very true. Very true. We should have Josh Fidel on again.
Go.
He was just great to hear from. Actually, looking back at this list, I was like, you know, over the next 100 episodes, we could just talk to each of these people again. Each of them had such interesting things to say.
Or we could fill it with a list of 100 new people or 50 new people that whose stories need to be told.
Yeah, Kelly Schrader. That's another episode conversation that I really enjoyed. 58 and 59. Yeah, okay. We could just do this for the rest of the episode. That's probably no good. But hopefully, if you haven't listened to our entire back catalog, we've given you some episode numbers that would be, worth checking in on. Some names of people that we interviewed and some of the reasons why we enjoyed talking to them. All right, Nick, maybe we could talk about just kind of reflecting on the 100 episodes that we've done. Like, what are the lessons that we've learned? If somebody's out there thinking about getting into podcasting, what can we say about the process that maybe they would be interested in?
One thing for me that comes to mind immediately is set a dedicated time each week to get together to do planning and recording.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you each prepare something offline for an episode you're going to record the next week, or you spend a certain amount of time planning before the episode, or both. But I know for us, if we're not consistently doing that each week, then we end up not hitting our release cadence like we want to.
Yeah, totally agree. And there's times when we're able to like put together content completely separately from each other, but I would say a lot of the time we actually need to be on like a phone call or Google Meet or a Zoom or Hangout or whatever, in order to collaborate and kind of finalize things, if nothing else. So,
Yep, that's a good point.
yeah.
I mean, how else can we read the show word for word every time?
Yeah, right. Fully scripted.
Exactly.
I would say that the thing that jumps into my mind was the launch, because I think we got a few episodes recorded, and then it became an issue of how do we launch. And I want to say that we recorded for like the better part of like 9 months before actually launching, right? Something like November to like June.
Yeah, we started doing practices I think it was in December
Okay.
2017. And then the launch actually was while I was on vacation, which is a perfect time for me because I was freed up to work on the podcast. But it was in July 2018 was when the launch happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we had a bunch of pre-recorded episodes, but they were really long.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of them were an hour and a half. And so we had to chop them up into pieces and toss some out because they didn't fit with what the mantra of the show eventually became.
Right. Like they were off topic. Like I remember we recorded a segment about the ins and outs of like vSAN 5.5 or something, a release there. And I was like, oh, yeah, but that's not actually, one, it's not topical anymore because it's like 6 months old or whatever at that point. But also, it's not what we're talking about just in general. It's not a career related thing. It was a little bit more like our jobs related.
Right.
And we had like kind of drifted away from the idea of being like it's like VMware podcast because there's already several of them out there. So we had kind of found like a slightly different like niche of still talking to those same people, you know, VMware, operators, but maybe expanding that to IT operations people in general, and then focusing a little bit more on career than on technology.
Yeah, and we had these practice shows, let's call them,
Hmm.
that were maybe 3 segments long,
Right.
and each segment was basically enough for what we would now consider an episode.
Right.
And so, really, we probably had 15 to 20, quote, shows in the tank by the time we started chopping them up. But as we mentioned, we had to toss some of them because they didn't fit with the theme.
Hmm. I don't know if I would recommend doing it that way. Um, I think, one of the lessons that we learned there was that an hour and a half is too long. Like, going back, I would need to look at some of the timings on our older shows, but they probably skewed long. I think we probably still skew a little bit long for my preference. Like, we're kissing an hour like pretty regularly, when I think that probably we should be in the 30 to 45 minute area. But still, that hour and a half was just like way over that. We just had no way to judge how long it was going to take to talk through that, right?
Yeah, when you don't know, you really don't know.
Right.
We had no idea how long something might take based on an outline we had written with some details. I think now we can probably make an outline together and go, oh, yeah, that's probably something that we can riff back and forth for 40 minutes on.
Right. It, I don't know that we've ever needed to stretch a topic. I don't think that we've gone, oh man, we're just really didn't have much to say about that.
It always turns into more.
Maybe that's part of the being like a pre-sales technical engineer, is having strong opinions that you want to talk about.
Could be.
Hmm. All right. Another thing that I remembered was really the barrier to the launch became like a mental block for me. Like, I had this vision of how it was going to be. Like, I knew that, editing and stuff wasn't going to be too much of an issue. But what I was really blocked on was like the technology platform that we were going to launch on. So there's the very simple put out a WordPress site, create, there's plugins, more than one plugin to manage podcast RSS feeds. And I got kind of chased this idea down a rabbit hole of like, oh, this would be a great opportunity for me to learn about containerization, and having like a one container for the WordPress instance, and then a different container for the database instance, and have them be independent of each other, and so we can upgrade them like independently of each other. And I was putting a lot of work into that. And then also, like, at a certain point I came across the idea of having like a static website, where you maybe use like WordPress as like a I don't know exactly how to put it, like a content management system, but then when you publish out, it just publishes like a flat series of files, and it's supposed to be like super highly performant. Anyway, I'm falling down the same like rabbit hole, right? It's like none of that stuff really mattered to the podcast. The podcast, in order to be published, needed to like the the least like effort platform that was going to do the like things that we needed. We needed to own the domain, and we needed to own the RSS feed, and anything that got like the thing that got us there fastest is what really mattered.
Yeah. And when you first started editing this, John, because I don't really know how to edit podcasts, so I'll just throw that out there. But when you first started editing, was it extremely time consuming and difficult to know when to let it go and when to keep going on the edit?
I think that some of my experience going to these podcast meetups, and when I say that, like, they're actually like run through like meetup.com. which is not an endorsement of that platform. It just happens to be like the groups that I met up with were through meetup.com. Um, they they kind of had talked through some of the ins and outs of that as like major topics of those meetings, which was, the easiest thing to do is to do no editing at all, to not put in any music, to not do any transitions, to just take the raw file and then upload that. And I knew that that probably wasn't going to be what we did, because we were going to make mistakes and we were going to want to retake things. And we didn't necessarily want any of that stuff in. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be like a 40-hour a week job to edit a 1 hour podcast. Right. So I think we threaded the needle pretty effectively there. If I certainly don't go through and remove every single time I say like that would be a nightmare because I say it a lot. I think what we try to do is to not say that word, right? Not say well,
What
all
word?
the pause words, I think is what some groups call them. But that comes with experience and just doing it over and over again and concentrate on being better at it, which I don't know that we necessarily do. We spend some time thinking about it and listening to ourselves and going, ooh, I feel like I'm just reading at this point. And then I think to myself and go, oh, I was just reading that. I need to, in order for me to sound better and be more energetic, I need to not read things out loud. So reading from a script is like probably not what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, and I think we learned that lesson pretty quick and ended up making our outlines less detailed just
Yeah.
so that we wouldn't fall into that trap.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. I think that we've talked to some people over the years who have asked us about starting podcasts. And what's interesting is that the technology platforms tend to be what the questions are about. Like, what microphones do you use? Do you use a mixer or not? Like, how are you editing? How are you doing uh, remote recording, those kinds of things. And like I think that we have hopefully like the simplest versions of answers for that. Like we use these fairly inexpensive ATR 2100 mics. I think I said at the time there's definitely a gap between like a $20 mic and a $100 mic, but the gap between a $100 mic and a $400 mic like wasn't enough for us to do unless it was like became a critical part of our jobs. So let's not do it. If we get to 20 episodes, maybe we should invest $400 in mics. Well, we've gotten past then and we still haven't.
Yeah, it was minimal investment in microphone equipment. I think I ended up getting the same microphone as you so we'd sound consistent, and it's been good enough ever since.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we use the Squadcast platform to record because we're in different cities. So Squadcast has a platform that records local sound, a local quality sound, and then uploads separate tracks later, which we then combine in Audacity. So I do all the editing in Audacity, and then we publish out to WordPress using the Blueberry um, podcast plugin. Although we don't use Blueberry for hosting, just the plugin. Hopefully that's enough detail. But if anybody has any additional questions, for some reason any questions seem to center around technology and not about process, which I would say over time, like the issue has been process, not technology, right?
Right. Just learning how to carry your own weight in a segment and making sure you're not filling the space with silence or filler words, things of that nature. You just have to be careful and make sure that you really have enough to say about what you think you want to say.
yeah, bringing a point of view or an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are we going to run out of ideas, do you think? Did we?
Nope. I'm
Oh,
pretty
okay.
sure we won't.
All right.
Because it seems like at any point when we go, oh, I don't think we have any ideas right now, we go and look at our ideas page and it's full.
Hmm.
And then we start making this list of, okay, we're going to do these in the next 10 to 15 episodes. And then we get new ideas and ended up putting those ahead of what was on the hot list already. So I don't think we're going to run out.
Yeah. That said, if you have a person that has a point of view that you think that we're missing, I would I would hope that you could tell us. Please tell us. We'd love to have interesting points of view that we haven't thought of yet, um, to talk about career progression.
100%.
All right. Do you want to talk about the next 100 episodes?
Yes. So hopefully we can get to, instead of 272 for the most popular episode, we can get to, say, 2,000, right?
Wait, are you talking about stats goals for downloads for the next 100 episodes?
Oh, is that not what you wanted? I'm sorry.
I would be surprised if we grew 2x over the next
I'm
100
kidding,
episodes.
John. I'm kidding. It's not about the stats. It's about, are we being helpful? Have people listened and found helpful content? Hopefully you have, if you're a listener today. For me, I really like going out and recruiting people to be on the show.
Mm.
Listening for interesting situations and stories that people can tell. Whether I meet them at work, I come across someone who's a friend of a friend of a friend wrote on LinkedIn or Twitter and go, there's a story there. I wonder if that person would be on the show. I like the different perspectives, the different stories of transition from job to job to job to job, what made someone want to make a change or go in a certain direction. And, selfishly, I think we probably need more diversity on the podcast. We've only had 3 ladies on so far. So, ladies, if you're out there, we need more of you on the show, and we certainly want to get more female perspectives on here too.
Yeah, that would be very welcome. And we should be more mindful about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think we actually have some ideas and some people that we've put in the queue. We just need to pull the trigger, reach out to them.
And that's one thing you don't realize when you're doing a podcast like this. There's the creating the content, making the show notes, doing the editing, making sure you hit your releases, putting together outlines that you maybe do together and or with a guest, but also scheduling the guest, making sure that you have multiple episodes planned so that if you miss a week, you don't get too far behind. If you don't consistently keep that tank full, then you're going to get behind and you're not going to hit your release dates.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we have our goals, but I don't know that I've been like extremely disappointed about missing a week just because it's not our day jobs. But I mean, it is my goal, to have something to put out every week, um, something of high quality. So, once again, call for ideas. If there's something that you want us to address within the genre, if it's just an interesting conversation, somebody who you look up to, or you just think, well, I assume that person has had an interesting career. Like, I wonder if the Nerd Journey duo would go over their career with them and pull out some lessons learned. That would be great. Like, we have those ideas too, but we want your ideas as well. I have this. I've been looking around and have noticed that there's a couple other podcasts kind of in a similar genre or related genres, some of whom that we've talked to before, but not all on the air, that I think maybe it would be nice to revisit. The IT Reality podcast is out there now. They launched, since we started, but has been really interesting to listen to. I think it'd be nice to have those two on. The pre-sales collective, since we are both in that pre-sales genre, it might be interesting to talk to them about, doing a podcast in the genre and what that's like, and maybe lend our point of view. Having Ramsey Marjaba on again to talk about We the SEs and how he's grown that community, that would be really interesting. He has a co-host now, so having the two of them on, that might be really cool. And then I think somebody pointed us to the IT Career Energizer podcast, which seems to have like a lot of crossover with what we do. It'd be really interesting to talk to somebody else and that's specifically covering exactly what we're covering, and get again that different point of view, how they do things, so on and so forth. So that's just some like brainstorming on my part, but I also think that some of the people that we've talked to, it'd be nice to check in and see if they've had any other realizations or ideas or revelations since we talked to them. Catching up with ... person's name here.
I agree. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who don't know that they have a story to tell. I guarantee you, if you've changed jobs a few times, then you have stories to tell about the why, the motivations behind it, what you learned each time you did it. And all those things could help someone else that's listening to this podcast, much like it's helped John and myself. So keep that in mind as you're listening. Just like we talk about going and doing a presentation at a conference or giving a talk on something you've done, it's not really that different being part of an interview, because we're not here to do some kind of gotcha interview. We're here to make you look good and highlight that content that's going to be helpful to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So even if you just want to come on and be a guest, just let us know. Self-nominate. Anything else, Nick, before we get out of here? I think we're starting to kiss that hour mark again.
Last question, John. Do you have a favorite format that we've done? Whether it be with guests, without guests, the book report format, anything?
I would say I'm always interested in learning about other perspectives. So the two things that I've really liked have been speaking with guests and getting their perspectives on things, finding out their life stories and their career stories, their career journeys, things that I just didn't know about them, and, things that you can't tell from looking at somebody's LinkedIn. And I think in that same way, I enjoyed discussing books with you, because we both have different perspectives and takeaways and, different backgrounds. So we respond to different things. So that was very, very interesting. Um, but it didn't need to be like long form, like a book, even just an article that we both read and had different perspectives on. That was interesting as well. We haven't really done like the career clickbait segment in a while. That was
No, we
something
haven't.
that we did early on, and then we just kind of walked away from. But maybe we should get back into it. Maybe I just haven't come across much of it. Career clickbait articles on LinkedIn or Twitter, which,
Give it time.
yeah. For those who haven't listened to our entire back catalog, we used to have this segment that we called Career Clickbait, which was an article about career advancement that just popped up on LinkedIn like once or maybe twice, that we would click through on it and go, well, was this clickbait or not? Was there anything there that was interesting or not? Anything unique or not? So you wouldn't have to.
Episode 9. That's my all-time favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah, how to dress for an interview. The John White comment about how to dress for an interview is just fantastic.
The John White rant on how to dress for an interview?
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
It was one of your better soapbox moments.
if you're trying to goad me into doing it again, I'm not going to.
All
What
right.
the thing that you should do is find out all the other times that you successfully goaded me into going over the rant again.
That
That would be
sounds like a great stat for the next reflection episode.
in 100 episodes. We'll have that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wish we had tracked how many stingers.
Oh yeah, I
That would
actually
have been.
think that I tagged everything in WordPress as having a stinger or not. So maybe
All
I
right.
can
All
maybe I can
right.
pull that out. 10 episodes. nerdjourney.com/tag/stinger.
Ah.
Yeah, that is interesting. It's more embarrassing.
Yeah, but it's all in good fun.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Anything else before we get out of here?
Nope. Just a reminder, we want people to subscribe and give us a positive review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. We want to know if we're being helpful and are always looking for interesting questions to ponder. We're collectively on Twitter at Nerd Journey.
All right. Farewell, listeners. Tune in next time as the journey continues. I'm John White at VJourneyman for Nick Cordy at NetworkNerd_, signing off.
Adios. Ultimately, we're just two nerds on a journey.
A nerd journey? That's not what I meant to say.